Hello and welcome to a new series of Recruitment Leaders Unlocked. This series is all about leadership. In the first episode, I interview Summer King, the MD of Superyacht Crew UK. Summer opened her recruitment agency without having any leadership experience whatsoever. So it's a really interesting conversation to hear how her leadership style has matured and it's how it's helped create the culture within her business and forged certain things that she does now that will help develop her business in the future. One thing she brings out is to be clear, is to be kind, especially when you're blurring the lines between friendship and leadership, especially in a small recruitment agency. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Recruitment Leaders Unlocked. Welcome to episode 1 of Recruitment Leaders Unlocked with me, Howard Greenwood. This series is all about leadership. So in this episode, my guest is Summer King, the MD of Superyacht Crew Recruitment UK. Summer runs her agency, and she's been running for almost 3 years now. And as the name suggests, it's in the niche market of super yachts, a very exotic supermarket. Currently, she has a headcount of 2, but is now looking to expand. So welcome, Summer. I look forward to hearing all about your leadership story during the podcast, learning more about you and your business and how things are going. The episode objective is to hear how Summer has led her super yacht business and what can be learned from her journey and her experiences so far. So let's kick off. Summer, welcome. It's been a pleasure to have you today, as always. Okay.
Thank you.
First question. Let's get straight into the meat of the subject. What leadership principles have been the foundations of your success, and how have they evolved as your business has started to grow?
It's a really interesting question because when I first started this journey, as you say, nearly 3 years ago, when I first started, I was like, I want to do this on my own, be a one-man band, like I'm fine. I was, great at it before and I don't need anyone around me. But I think as I got into it and the business grew a lot quicker than I expected, I learned very quickly that my vision at the beginning wasn't necessarily correct. So I had clear goals at the beginning, which have obviously adapted. But what I've done differently is setting goals and the culture that I am building. So I now want to create a culture where people can thrive and be supported. So I suppose that mindset shift has been quite drastic and for the better. And ultimately, as I've seen already, it's helping the business grow and then motivating the team and being a stronger, supportive team together.
So it's an interesting sort of answer to that question. So when you say it's evolved, tell me what sort of things have evolved.
I would say probably my mindset personally and my growth more than like anyone else. I'm totally new to the leadership game, and so I'm still learning and developing. But I think a lot of the people that maybe I've had in the team previously and interviewed, I've learned a lot that things do improve and for the better, and you learn from certain things that have happened. So I think it is just refining ways of going forward and having a clearer vision that is always adapting.
It's interesting, isn't it? Talking to somebody who's never sort of been in a leadership position and haven't sort of, your own business is now 3 years old, so it's getting to that point where it's starting to mature as a business and sort of learning leadership as you go along. So I'm sure there's been lots of interesting mishaps. So can you give me a time or share a time when your leadership approach has sort of backfired, and what did you learn from the experience and how did it shape your future decisions?
I would say like having a very small team, sometimes I think that's a little bit harder. And then when there was 2 of you in the business, I kind of tend to go through like the friendly approach. And I think I really do want to create a positive culture and atmosphere for people to enjoy their work. And I think I've been in situations previously where maybe I've blurred the lines slightly, and I've been a bit too friendly with them. And obviously I still want to be friendly with my colleagues. That is something that I do strive to have. But I think, I blurred the lines and it made me feel maybe slightly reserved to have the more difficult conversations because I didn't want to set any individuals. And unfortunately, that did kind of have an implication on the business, and I probably left two things too long without saying anything. So I've now got this new motto of being clear is kind, and just giving, individuals feedback when needed, and just being completely open with them and not holding back, but being obviously still very polite and giving clear direction with the feedback.
I do like that. Being clear is kind. I remember like yourself, as when I first moved into management, not a lot of people teach you how to management. There was not a lot of other than learn on the job and learn from the manager you had before.
Yeah.
That communication is really clear, and there are blurred lines in any business between that friendship and demarcating where your management then kicks in. So be clear to be kind. So what have you said? Are you then setting out sort of parameters of where your expected behaviour is from a recruitment point of view and from an employee point of view, and then say if they cross that line, that's when you start to pick up on?
Yeah, I think my approach is, I'd like to think like I'm a very approachable person anyway, so that's just like my managing style anyway. But I think, when you've given someone the benefit of the doubt and things aren't still changing, or, that attitude or their behaviours have slightly taken a turn, then obviously that obviously needs to be addressed. So I think I just don't need to be so frightened in approaching the situation.
So give me an example. You said you had a couple of times where you'd sort of left it a little bit and it hadn't worked out. Give me how you approached that situation and what the outcomes were then.
So with regards to, I suppose, approaching it and giving it a few chances of, things to change. And my way of is delivering and how I put it across. And that's something that I've really worked on personally, is my delivery on things. So I'm much more aware of my tone and how I come across with individuals. And also everyone is different at receiving that feedback. So the outcome is that I, had the conversation with an individual, and then it kind of backfired a little bit because the atmosphere completely changed. And it didn't create the most happiest of environments. So I'm also wary of how people perceive me and how I deliver the feedback.
Okay, that's interesting, isn't it? So when you sort of deliver people, when you start to be hard as a manager, it's very easy to manage when it's easy, when the business is going well.
Yeah.
When you start to sort of fall apart, it's very hard to manage, and people react quite heavily when they think, we've created this really good friendship, and then you draw the management line, and then all of a sudden it's a very, very different world from there. How did you recover from that situation then?
It's a massive learning curve, I think, and I still want to be my authentic self. And as I said, I still want to be approachable, but I feel like maybe raising things a little bit sooner, or when people start in the business, laying out, I would, we obviously need to get on and perform well. And this is my mission of what culture I'm creating, that I am, we can be friendly with one another, but I am your boss at the end of the day. And we are here to create my vision together. So I think it's just being completely honest with people at the front end.
Okay. So as you sort of move along then, recruitment is really fast-paced and it's really high-pressured and it creates all sorts of different things. So how do you then balance driving performance whilst maintaining a strong and engaging that company culture from a leadership point of view?
I think balancing that performance and culture is a challenge. And I think for most people, I think, I really want to strive to create an environment where people can thrive individually as well as in a team. And, we don't want to be sacrificing well-being. I want people to enjoy the culture that we are trying to create as one another. So, and that is something that isn't just created by me, but also with individuals within the business. So my style, I don't like to micromanage in any way. And yes, we do have targets that we work towards, which I think any business like us does have. And I think it's actually, I love a target anyway. I love working towards something and feeling accomplished. So But yeah, as I said, my style isn't to micromanage anyone, but we do celebrate the behaviours within the business as well. It's not just about hitting targets. So it's like individuals going that extra mile, helping out a colleague, for that client, the candidate. They're the sort of behaviours that I do really want to recognise in individuals within the business. So it's not what we do, it's how we do it. And that's not just within the business, with each other, but also outside with candidates and clients.
So it's interesting that you said you recognise both performance and how people behave in the business. Okay.
Yeah.
How has that changed from, let's go back into your sort of sales career where you were managed by other people? Do you think you've learned from what happened when you were being managed before to now managing people yourself? Because I very seldom find people really manage behaviours or actually use that as a measuring stick, because it's too busy measuring the performance of what person's gone. So how's that changed from when you were being managed to now you're managing other people?
A really good question. It's not something I've really thought about before. I came from a world which was very sales dominating. So I suppose it was very hard, direct, and that is not my method at all. And I think that's what I've learned not to be like. So with the behaviours, this is something that I've learned a lot from yourself even relating to the yachts, they always fire usually on behaviours. It's not their skill set, because you can teach that. So I just think it's deeply important for the behaviour side of things. And I don't think I've really had a manager that ever focused on that. It was just like, well, if you didn't hit your target, you're out the door kind of approach.
So what you're saying there is interesting. You mentioned that certain point about, even the yachts that you're working with, they generally fire people on their behaviours. So
Yes.
Does that change then how you recruit people into the business? Because as you said, it's fast-paced, it's high-pressured, and you're having to balance performance constantly while maintaining that company culture.
Yeah.
Has that changed how you thought you would bring people into the business?
Oh, 100%. Like, completely changed my mindset. And I think the fact that, you're on this journey, and I come up against obstacles, challenges, different things that I never thought that I would have come across. So it's been definitely a huge learning curve, but definitely a journey that I've loved.
Okay. So then if you look at that as a whole, what's been your biggest leadership challenge that you've faced when you start to scale your business? And even now, how are you starting to overcome that?
I think this will always be an ongoing challenge, but definitely hiring the right people with the sort of the values and attributes that I'm looking for, and the right behaviours that we've already touched upon. And I think that is truly for the long-term success of an individual, and also for the business. So I think this is always going to be constantly refining the hiring approach and learning on each individual that also goes through that process, because not everyone reacts the same. So I think it's also constantly evolving that process, and make sure that they do align with the values and the pace and the culture and profiling that I am looking for in an individual. So it's an interesting journey, but I don't think I'm definitely on the journey of improving it for sure. And the last hire we made has been an excellent hire. So we're improving.
So when you think about that improvement that you've made, obviously you said in the question before that you've changed your recruitment strategy to bring people in. Okay. Has that then helped create a better leadership style for yourself, or is your leadership style still learning as you bring the right people in?
I think the latter. I'm still learning as the people that I bring in. And, there's the things that we have changed, like a behavioural profiling. We did that last time, which has really helped just to give me more of an insight of the individuals. So, and things that I'm doing on a weekly basis, like the Friday meetings, like training, informal check-ins, making them feel valued. So I think those little things do add up. And it's all about, I suppose, that engagement between the two of us and building the right foundations for the team.
So you mentioned a really interesting point to me, especially when you're bringing people in, that you put them through some sort of psychometric test, some sort of behavioural test. Talk to me about how you set your behaviours out and how you measure that, and then from a leadership point of view, how you manage those behaviours to ensure that they are instilled in the business to create the culture that you want?
Yeah, I think you have to be really careful because we don't want everyone to be like a clone of each other. So the way that I view it is we can see, so with this one, you can see like all the individuals in the team that have taken it to make sure like the individual coming in does like slot into the team. So if, you know, there might be an individual that I'm weak on that someone else coming into the business is really strong at. So it's all about making sure the fundamentals of the business is covered by everyone. So I think I've obviously got the set behaviours that I am looking for, but I'm also very aware that we can't all be amazing at one thing. We want everyone to have their own strengths within the business so everyone can thrive.
So that's interesting. So everyone can thrive. So what you've said is that each individual person has a certain key set of strengths.
Yeah.
But they have to match within the behaviours and values that you've set out. So you can then manage from that point of view and drive the right culture that you believe will take your business to the next level.
Correct, it's because I don't feel like you can train behaviours or personality. That is someone. So with the skill set, yes, we can adapt to training, but the personality, that's what I truly believe is the most important thing when hiring.
Okay. So here's then a sort of a question that sort of leads into that. You know, we've looked and talked about growth quite a bit and about as a business grows, naturally your leadership will shift away from the front line because you're still billing, okay, and then it shifts. So how do you inspire and develop future leaders, especially when you've not been in that sort of leader position yourself for very long? So how do you sort of develop future leaders within your business, and what's going to be your strategy for succession planning?
I think the thought of taking a step back is actually really challenging because I'm so used to being on the front line and I really do love, you know, doing those things with the team. But I know it's going to get to a stage as the business scales that, you know, I do need to empower and build leaders within the team. So I think to say that I've nailed and developed that strategy wouldn't be true. So I think that's something that will come as, you know, as the business does grow. But that is something for my own personal development as well, is something that I need to concentrate on. But at this stage, I really, you know, taking a step back, I can see like doing more of the business development side of things. But, you know, I'm always up for improving and refining the plan, which, to be completely honest, hasn't probably been set just yet.
So looking at that, because obviously that is a big leap, isn't it? But it's a leap that every business leader wants to get, every business owner wants to get to the point where they can spend more time working on the business rather than working in the business.
Yeah.
So how fundamental for you then is your own development as a leader to ensure that you are passing good practice down to the rest of the people within your business? So when you start to select people for those leadership roles, they've got a good role model to follow as in yourself, but also they are seeing the impact of what good leadership actually does.
Yeah, I think that's just something that, you know, I always want an individual to feel like they're learning and progressing and hopefully drip feeding that information on their journey as we're going on and as they develop themselves, because I don't want everyone to feel stagnant. So I suppose this is like a long-term goal rather than like, right, this date I'm going to step back and this is the plan. So I think this is like a gradual shift.
So a gradual shift over time, which I think is the right thing to do. It's a long process as it gets to the point where you feel comfortable that you can step back.
Yeah.
And it's a long process to think that someone who's never been in leadership before, who's never been in leadership before, but is now stepping into leadership and then coaching and managing people underneath them to pick up those leadership reins. How do you think your own style manifests into a really strong culture?
I think this is, again, having the right people and the mindset and having confidence, I suppose, within my team and really building a really internal network that aligns with our values.
Okay. So really it's really interesting as someone sort of like yourself has said who's never been sort of in leadership role. So give us an idea then. If you could go back, it's been almost 3 years since you started the business. So that's the first time you stepped into a role. Okay.
Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself about leading a recruitment business? Now you've got 3 years of experience of managing yourself, which is always a task. Sometimes I find managing your own personal situations, but also managing others as they've come through the business.
I think at the beginning, and I think this is like with any new leaders, or if you're setting up a business, you just want to drive that business and get the results. And I think I've learned really quickly that actually building a scalable business, not just for growth, but also for the culture and attracting the right people, I've definitely learned that it's not just about performance and driving the results. And seeing people like the yachts that are working with us now, you kind of think, actually, we did go the longer way around, but I did it the right way, because you can now see the results and we're authentic. People are feeding off of this energy that we do have. So I think I probably learned that fairly quickly, and showing up for one another as well within the business, and how actually when we are having a rubbish day, it's like, how do we handle those setbacks with one another, and how do we model the good behaviours, how we deal with things and how we pick each other up, I think is also really important. And also gaining, the right drive in individuals. And I think we're definitely heading in the right direction.
Okay, so give me an example then of sort of through that 3-year period where you found that direction that you're going in has been started to be dragged to one side or pulled backwards by either someone that you've brought into the business, or B, yourself and your own sort of lack of management skills. Give me an idea how you then put that back on track to really drive the business forward.
I think you got sometimes the way that I deal with things, and everyone may be different, but I do kind of take myself with the situation as, actually, let's just review what we've got here and just take a step back instead of, rushing into anything. I think it's really important to be able to, develop yourself and like, what can you change personally? And that is something that I've done quite a lot of over the last 3 years. Also like having your assistance and advice and just learning from different people. So I think it's just a constant development, I think. I don't think that will ever change.
So what you're saying is, when we sort of look at what we're trying to recap here and sort of look at the whole thing, what you're saying is then that to you, the first and foremost part of management is for yourself to learn to develop and keep developing yourself over each individual situation. You then start to think about the people that you're managing. So bringing the right people into your business is absolutely critical for you to create the culture, maintain the culture, but also to create a second line of succession planning. So when you finally want to step away, you've got people in the business who are managing in the style that you want to manage or be managed in, and for other people to bring in. One of the things that I said, which I think is really interesting, is that you've got to be clear to be kind. So when you're bringing people in with such a small business, and it is very difficult as small business because it's so easy to get so ingrained with each other, but you've got to be clear to be kind, to make sure that everyone understands where the line between friendship and management is, and that you have a business to run, that you are running a business, and this isn't just a friendship group that's got together to make money, that you are trying to drive a business forward, and that really sort of helps that. And then obviously the last bit, as I said, is it's all about your development to make sure that you're forever stepping forward and not stepping sideways or backwards, and not letting the grass grow under your feet. From a management point of view, it is about learning and development and driving that forward from there. So if you then had one piece of advice to anybody who's stepping into recruitment to start up a recruitment business that's not been in leadership before, or to any recruitment leader, what would that be?
I would probably don't chase the performance side of things. I think, do some self-developing, read up on things, get advice from people, because, and don't rush into it either. Like, these sort of things do take time to be able to grow and move in the right direction. So yeah, I don't think you have to go full steam ahead, because sometimes that you don't gain the results by doing that.
So a colleague of mine, Dave Pye, always puts it this way, yeah, sometimes you've got to slow down to speed up.
Yeah. So I do believe in that.
Yeah. So it's really interesting, is it, when sort of, even as people start to develop, sometimes slowing down, taking stock of everything, to then say, right, okay, can we implement this now in the right way to make sure it's impactful and works for you?
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
Brilliant. Some of that is a really interesting sort of view from someone who's got no leadership experience whatsoever, stepped in, take that brave step to open a business in the first place, which is always a big step, but then suddenly starting to learn leadership on the spot. And as you grow, it's, I think, a very interesting, or some very interesting comments for every would-be leader to sort of think about and step into. So thanks very much, Sumit. It's been much appreciated. So we all look forward to seeing you all on the next Recruitment Leaders Unlocked podcast. You can find the podcast on our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple, as well as on our website, www.jumpadvisor.com, if I could say it, okay, where you can find all our services, and you can find all our webinars and podcasts from the past. Summer, once again, thanks very much, and we hope we see you all on the next episode of Recruitment Leaders Unlocked. Thank you very much.
Thank you.